Football is a game of pride, toughness, and heart, and no one carried those qualities better than Jerry Rice. He wasn't just the greatest wide receiver of all time, he was the standard everyone else was judged against. But greatness doesn't mean he liked everyone he lined up against. Far from it. Rice had respect for talent, sure, but there were certain players who got under his skin, pushed him to the edge, and sometimes left behind grudges that lasted for years. Today, we're diving into the 6 NFL players Jerry Rice hated the most, and the stories that made these rivalries unforgettable. For Jerry Rice, these rivalries went way beyond football. They were about pride, toughness, and proving he could outlast anyone who tried to break him. These clashes didn't just test him, they helped shape his legacy and gave the National Football League some of its fiercest battles. Number 6. Aeneas Williams, the silent assassin who tested Rice's limits. When people talk about Jerry Rice's toughest matchups, one name that always sneaks into the conversation is Aeneas Williams. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, he didn't have the trash talk of Deion Sanders or the drama of Warren Sapp. But what Williams did bring every single Sunday was pain. He was nicknamed the Silent Assassin for a reason, because he let his play do all the talking. And when you went across the middle against him, you knew you were going to pay for it. Rice, who built his career on precision routes and fearless catches, ran into Williams many times throughout the 1990s. And every single time, it felt like Williams was waiting to deliver that hit that reminded Rice this was not just a game, it was survival. Unlike some defensive backs who gambled for interceptions, Williams prided himself on shutting down entire passing attacks. He studied film like a quarterback, knew tendencies before receivers even broke on their routes, and he played with a kind of controlled violence that separated him from most of his peers. For Rice, the frustration came from how relentless Williams was. You could beat him on one play, maybe even two, but you weren't going to beat him all game. He adjusted, he fought, and he made you earn every single yard. And while Rice respected that, he also hated it. Because deep down, the greatest receiver in National Football League history wanted to dominate, not trade blows in a dogfight every Sunday. One of their most memorable battles came late in Rice's career during a playoff game when Williams delivered a hit that left the entire stadium gasping. It wasn't dirty, it was textbook, shoulder to chest, perfectly timed. But it was the kind of hit that made even Jerry Rice, a man known for toughness, think twice about crossing the middle, and that's saying something. When a receiver of Rice's caliber feels the shadow of a defender every time he lines up, you know that rival has carved out a permanent place in his head. Williams represented something larger about the National Football League during Rice's era. This wasn't the modern game with defenseless receiver rules and flags flying for every hard hit. This was the 1990s, when defensive backs were enforcers, and when a guy like Aeneas Williams could build a Hall of Fame career by making life miserable for the league's best. For Jerry Rice, that meant carrying a bruise, physical and mental, every time he walked off the field after facing him. But here's the thing about rivals born from respect. They stick with you. Rice didn't have to like Williams to know he was one of the few men who consistently tested his greatness. That's why, when talking about the players he hated, Williams makes the list. Not because of trash talk or cheap shots, but because he forced Rice to play at his very best just to survive. And if Williams was the rival who earned Jerry's respect through silent punishment, the next man on the list was something completely different. A cornerback whose battles with Rice were built on fiery words, hard hits, and a clash of personalities that made every meeting must-watch. Number 5. Rod Woodson, the rival who refused to break. If Jerry Rice was the gold standard for wide receivers, then Rod Woodson was the cornerback who never stopped chasing him. Their paths crossed countless times through the late 1980s and 1990s, and every matchup felt like two heavyweights trading blows. Woodson wasn't just fast, he was powerful, disciplined, and confident enough to line up against Rice without fear. That's what made their rivalry burn so hot. Rice thrived on dominance, but Woodson refused to be dominated. From the very first time they faced each other, Rice realized this wasn't going to be one of those easy games where his precise routes and sharp cuts would leave a corner spinning. Woodson studied receivers like a scientist, and with his background as a track star, he had the speed to recover even when beaten. Add in his strength and willingness to hit, and suddenly Jerry Rice found himself in a dogfight every time he ran a route in Woodson's direction. What made things even more personal was the stage they often shared. This wasn't just a few random games. Rice and Woodson collided in huge moments, games where playoff spots and legacies were on the line. One slip, one mistake, and the other would take advantage. For Rice, the constant pressure of knowing Woodson was shadowing him brought out a different edge. He respected Woodson's game, no doubt, but that respect came with frustration. Imagine being the greatest receiver of all time, yet every time you turned around, there was one man ready to push back, shove you at the line, and never let you breathe. There were games where Rice got the better of him, making the highlight reel look easy. But there were also days when Woodson held his ground, forcing Rice into fights for every single yard. Those kinds of battles build tension. They create grudges, not always because of cheap shots or trash talk, but because it's exhausting to know someone is never going to give you a break. Rice later admitted that Woodson was one of the toughest defenders he ever faced, but inside those wars, that toughness felt like hate. The rivalry was more than just athletic. It symbolized two Hall of Famers shaping each other's legacies. When fans look back at Jerry Rice's greatest catches or Rod Woodson's best defensive stands, many of them came at each other's expense. Each man forced the other to sharpen his craft, to push past limits, and that constant collision turned mutual respect into something sharper, something Rice carried with him whenever Woodson's name came up. But if Woodson tested Rice's skill and stamina, the next rival brought a completely different challenge. This wasn't about equal battles or mutual respect. It was about a defender who crossed the line, using trash talk and dirty tricks that made Jerry's blood boil. And that's where the story gets even more heated. Quick time out, I want to hear from you. Out of all these rivalries, which one do you think pushed Jerry Rice the hardest? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be checking them out. Number 4. Dale Carter, the corner who played dirty. If there was one defender who could crawl under Jerry Rice's skin, it was Dale Carter. Unlike Rod Woodson or Aeneas Williams, whose rivalries with Rice were built on respect, Carter had a reputation that drove Jerry crazy. He was physical to the point of reckless, never shying away from a late shove, a grab, or a hit that went just a little too far. Add in his nonstop trash talking, and you had the perfect recipe for a rivalry that felt more personal than professional. Carter made his name in the National Football League during the 1990s as a lockdown corner with the Kansas City Chiefs and later the Denver Broncos. He had speed, length, and athleticism to match up with almost anyone, but what separated him was the edge he brought to every snap. He didn't just want to cover you, he wanted to frustrate you, make you angry, and throw you off your game. And against Jerry Rice, he tried to do all of that every single time. For Rice, who prided himself on running flawless routes and letting his play speak for itself, Carter's style felt like a constant violation. It wasn't just that Carter was physical, plenty of corners were. It was that he seemed to take joy in pushing the limits of what he could get away with. Hands all over the jersey, bumps past 5 yards, jawing in Jerry's ear after the whistle. And worst of all, the officials didn't always call it. That drove Rice nuts because in his eyes, Carter wasn't just competing, he was breaking the code. One game in particular showed just how much Carter got to him. Rice caught a pass across the middle, and before he could even turn upfield, Carter launched into him with a shot that looked more like a linebacker's hit than a cornerback's tackle. The crowd gasped. Rice got up slow, and Carter stood over him talking. To Jerry, it wasn't just a hit, it was disrespect. And if there's one thing Jerry Rice couldn't stand, it was someone trying to disrespect his game. Their battles became must-watch because of that tension. Every time Carter lined up across from Rice, fans could feel something brewing. Was it going to be another big catch from the greatest receiver ever? Or was Carter going to take a shot that left Rice fuming? Either way, sparks were guaranteed. And this is why Carter sticks out on Jerry's list of hated rivals. He wasn't the most talented corner Rice ever faced, but he was one of the most annoying, one of the most frustrating. Because while guys like Woodson and Williams made Jerry respect them, Carter made Jerry want to embarrass him, to prove that no amount of dirty play or trash talk could keep him from greatness. But if Carter's antics lit a fire under Jerry, the next man on the list did something far worse. This wasn't about jawing or late hits. This was about one play, one moment that nearly ended Jerry Rice's career and left a grudge he never truly let go of. Number 3. Deion Sanders, when greatness collided with prime time. Few rivalries in National Football League history carried as much star power as Jerry Rice versus Deion Sanders. On one side, you had the greatest wide receiver to ever play the game. On the other, the flashiest, fastest corner the league had ever seen. Every time they lined up, fans knew they weren't just watching a football game, they were watching history. And make no mistake, as much as Rice respected talent, he admitted that during those battles he could not stand Deion Sanders. Deion was prime time in every sense of the word. He strutted onto the field with gold chains, high-stepping confidence, and a personality big enough to fill the entire stadium. But beneath the flash was a defender with unmatched speed and instincts. Sanders could do what few corners dared, cover Jerry Rice one-on-one without fear. That was both a challenge and an insult to Rice, who spent his career torching defenders who needed safety help to slow him down. The clashes between Rice and Sanders were legendary because of their contrasts. Jerry was all about precision, discipline, and quiet dominance. Deion was flamboyant, unpredictable, and loved to get in your head. One game might see Rice beating Sanders with crafty routes, leaving him trailing on a touchdown. The next could have Deion jumping a pass, taking it back the other way, and celebrating in style as Rice fumed. For fans, it was electric. For Jerry, it was infuriating. What fueled the hate even more was Deion's trash talk. He never missed a chance to let Rice know when he had won a snap, and Jerry, who wasn't a big talker, hated hearing it. To him, football was about respect, and Sanders had a way of turning every moment into a show. That rubbed Rice raw, because he wasn't just battling a cornerback, he was battling a personality, a showman who wanted to make Jerry Rice part of his highlight reel. And yet, that was exactly why their rivalry mattered so much. Sanders didn't back down, and Rice refused to be outshined. The fire between them pushed both men to play at their absolute best. Years later, when they became teammates in San Francisco, Rice admitted that he had hated going against Sanders because the intensity was unlike anything else. It wasn't personal once they wore the same uniform, but those battles left scars. For fans, Rice versus Sanders became the kind of rivalry that defined the 1990s. Every time they met, you knew something unforgettable was about to happen. And while Deion represented flash and fire, the next name on Jerry's list brought something far darker. A grudge born from one hit so devastating that Rice never forgave it. By the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us keep bringing you more legendary National Football League rivalries like this one. Number 2. Warren Sapp, the hit that changed everything. Some rivalries are built over years of battles. Others are born in a single unforgettable moment. For Jerry Rice and Warren Sapp, it was the latter. September 6, 1997, the opening game of the season, is a date burned into Rice's memory. On that day, one play, one hit from Sapp, turned into one of the darkest moments of his career. Sapp was already feared as one of the National Football League's most dominant defensive tackles. Big, powerful, and explosive, he controlled the line of scrimmage and made life miserable for quarterbacks and receivers alike. But what he did against Rice that afternoon wasn't just another highlight for his career. To Jerry, it was a cheap shot that left scars he would never forgive. The play was supposed to be routine. Rice running a reverse, a chance for him to showcase the same speed and smooth moves that had embarrassed defenses for over a decade. Instead, as he turned the corner, Warren Sapp reached out and yanked Rice down by his face mask. The violent pull twisted Jerry's body awkwardly, and when he hit the ground, his left knee gave out. Torn ACL, torn MCL. Just like that, in the very first game of the season, the greatest receiver in National Football League history had his career hanging by a thread. For a man who had played in 189 straight games, who had been the very definition of durability, it was devastating. Rice had never experienced an injury like this before, and in his mind, it wasn't just bad luck. It was the result of Sapp's reckless play. To Jerry, it wasn't football. It was dirty, and he carried that bitterness for years. What made the wound deeper was that Rice had always prided himself on taking hits, bouncing back up, and never showing weakness. This time, he couldn't. His season was over. For fans, it was shocking to see the unbreakable Jerry Rice sidelined. For Rice himself, it was infuriating to know that one face mask, one moment, had stolen away a year of his career. Sapp, of course, defended himself, saying it was just football, just part of the game. But for Rice, there was no forgiveness. That single play became the defining image of their rivalry. Whenever Warren Sapp's name came up, Jerry didn't think of sacks or Pro Bowls. He thought of that face mask, that knee injury, and the career-altering hit that he believed should never have happened. And that's why Sapp ranks so high on the list. This wasn't about trash talk or hard but fair hits or even a playoff battle. This was about Jerry Rice's career nearly being stolen in an instant. And for him, that was unforgivable. But as much as Rice hated that moment, there was still one rivalry that burned hotter than all the rest, not with a single player, but with an entire team. The team that stood in his way again and again, and the one he admitted he flat out hated. Number 1. The Dallas Cowboys, the star Jerry couldn't stand. When Jerry Rice was asked who he hated the most, he didn't hesitate. It wasn't one player, it wasn't even one position. It was an entire team. I hate those Dallas Cowboys.
Didn't like it. I did not like the Cowboys at all.
And if you followed football in the 1990s, you know exactly why. The San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys weren't just rivals. They were the two heavyweights of the National Football League. Every road to the Super Bowl seemed to pass through one of them, and more often than not, they collided head-on. For Jerry Rice, that meant the Cowboys weren't just another opponent. They were the wall he had to climb, the star on the helmet that kept trying to block his path to glory. The bitterness went beyond the scoreboard. Dallas had swagger, stars of their own like Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman, and Emmitt Smith. They carried themselves with the kind of confidence that rubbed opponents raw, and Jerry Rice hated seeing it. Every time he stepped onto the field against them, the tension was thick. These weren't just games, they were wars for respect, for pride, and for championships. The rivalry reached its peak in the NFC Championship games of the early 1990s. 3 years in a row, the 49ers and Cowboys clashed with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. For Rice, those games were everything. The hits were harder, the trash talk louder, and the stakes bigger than any regular season matchup. Losing to Dallas wasn't just a setback, it felt personal. It meant watching the very team he despised hold up the trophy he wanted. And that hatred fueled him. Jerry Rice played his best football on the biggest stages, and nothing brought out his fire more than facing the Cowboys. He knew that beating them wasn't just about advancing, it was about proving that the 49ers were still kings, and that no star on a helmet could dim his greatness. Looking back, Jerry's words still carry weight. I hate those Dallas Cowboys, because when you peel it back, it wasn't just about dislike. It was about what the Cowboys represented, the biggest obstacle of his career, the rival that tested his dynasty, the team that forced him to be legendary. And that's why they stand at the top of his hate list. The Cowboys weren't just another opponent, they were the opponent. They defined Jerry Rice's era, and the battles between San Francisco and Dallas remain some of the fiercest in National Football League history. These rivalries weren't just football games, they were battles of pride, respect, and survival that shaped Jerry Rice's entire career. From corners who tested him every snap to the Cowboys he flat out hated, each one left a mark on the greatest receiver the game has ever seen. But what do you think? Did we miss a player you remember Jerry clashing with? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and get ready, because the next story dives into another National Football League legend who built his greatness on rivalries just like these.